Zachariah Ortega had seen enough war to know that monsters came in all shapes, but none of them had ever looked at him the way the orc girl did when she stumbled into his barn that frozen winter morning, not with hunger or rage, but with pure, exhausted desperation that reminded him too much of the mirror. He'd been forking hay for the horses when he heard the crash, spinning around to find her collapsed against the doorframe, one hand pressed to her side where blood seeped dark and thick between her fingers, the other clutching a broken spear shaft like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her green skin looked ashen in the pale dawn light, and when their eyes met, hers widened with something between fear and resignation, like she was already preparing for him to drive her back out into the snow. "Easy," he said, the same tone he used with spooked horses, setting down the pitchfork slowly. "You're hurt." She tried to straighten, wincing, and he saw her jaw clench around those small tusks that curved up from her lower lip. "I will go," she said, her voice rough and accented but clear. "I only needed a moment to rest. You'll bleed out before you make it to the tree line." Zachariah stepped closer, hands visible and empty. "Let me see the wound." Her dark eyes searched his face, looking for the trap, the trick, the violence she clearly expected. When he didn't move to attack, confusion flickered across her features. She was young, he realized, probably not much past 20, with black hair braided back from her face and leather armor that had seen better days. The blood loss was making her sway. "Why?" she asked. "Because I'm a healer," he said, which was only half true. He'd been a field medic in the border wars before he'd come out here to farm and forget. "And because you're going to die on my property if I don't, which would be terrible for both of us." That almost got a smile out of her, he thought, but she caught it quickly, one hand flying up to cover her mouth. The gesture was so sudden and self-conscious that it startled him more than her initial appearance had. She lowered her hand immediately, as if embarrassed by her own reflex. "I am Orla Lennox," she said finally. "I was. My clan does not want me anymore, Zachariah, and I don't particularly care what your clan wants." He gestured toward the farmhouse. "Can you walk that far?" She nodded, pride straightening her spine even as she leaned heavily on the spear shaft. He stayed close as they crossed the yard, ready to catch her if she fell, but she made it to the door through sheer stubborn will. His farmhouse was simple but warm, the fire still burning from breakfast, and he guided her to the wooden table where he'd stitched up more than one injured animal over the years. "Sit," he said, already pulling out his medical supplies from the cabinet. Clean cloth, needle and thread, the bottle of strong alcohol he saved for emergencies. When he turned back, she'd managed to unbuckle the leather armor with shaking hands, revealing a deep gash along her ribs that still oozed blood. "This is going to hurt," he warned. "Everything hurts already." But her voice was tight when he pressed the cloth to the wound, cleaning away the blood to see the damage. A blade wound, relatively clean but deep enough to need stitches. He worked efficiently, the old skills coming back like muscle memory, and she bore it with gritted teeth and white knuckles on the edge of the table. "Why did they cast you out?" he asked, partly to distract her, partly because he was genuinely curious. She was silent for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "I refused to raid a human village. Children lived there. My chieftain said I had gone soft, weak, that I was no true orc if I would not take what was ours by right of strength." Her jaw clenched. "So they made me fight 3 warriors to prove my loyalty. I won, but I would not kill the last one. He was my cousin. My chieftain said that mercy was the same as betrayal." Zachariah tied off the last stitch and reached for the bandages. "Sounds like your chieftain was an idiot." That did make her smile, a quick flash of expression before her hand jerked up to cover her mouth again. He caught her wrist gently, stopping the motion without force. "Why do you do that?" he asked. Her eyes met his, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with the wound he'd just closed. "Humans think tusks are ugly, monstrous. I have seen how they look at me. When I smile, it reminds them what I am." He held her gaze, still holding her wrist loosely enough that she could pull away if she wanted. "I think they're part of you. And right now, you're the bravest person who's walked onto this farm in years, so that makes them beautiful." She stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't know, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope before she looked away. "You are strange for a human. I've been told." He released her wrist and finished wrapping the bandages around her ribs. "You need rest and food. I have a spare room upstairs, nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry." "I cannot stay," she protested, even as exhaustion dragged at her features. "When they realize you helped me, let me worry about that." He corked the alcohol bottle and started putting away his supplies. "Right now, your job is to heal. Everything else can wait." She wanted to argue, he could see it in the set of her shoulders, but the blood loss and the first real warmth she'd felt in who knew how long were winning. "I will work," she said firmly, "to repay the debt. I am strong, good with animals. I can earn my shelter." "We'll talk about it when you're not actively bleeding," he said, which wasn't agreement but wasn't refusal either. He helped her up the narrow stairs to the small bedroom under the eaves, where she sat on the edge of the bed like she didn't quite believe it was real. "Rest. I'll bring food up in a few hours." He left before she could protest again, heading back downstairs to finish the morning chores with his mind spinning. Harboring an orc, even a cast-out one, could bring trouble from both sides. Humans in the nearby village already thought he was odd for living alone out here on the frontier, for not remarrying after his wife had died in the epidemic 5 years ago. And if Orla's clan came looking for her, well, that was a different kind of problem entirely. But when he'd looked into her eyes and seen that bone-deep expectation of rejection, of cruelty, something in him had refused to be just another human who proved her right. Over the following days, they developed a careful routine. Orla rested and healed with the resilient strength of her kind, and Zachariah discovered she'd been serious about working. By the end of the first week, she was insisting on helping with the lighter chores, feeding the chickens and collecting eggs with a gentleness that surprised him. The hens seemed to like her, clustering around her feet and clucking contentedly when she scattered their grain. "You have a way with them," he observed one morning, watching her from the barn door. She glanced up, and he caught that same reflexive motion, the start of a smile that she aborted halfway, her hand twitching toward her mouth before she forced it back down. She'd been trying to break the habit, he noticed, though it clearly took effort. "Animals do not care about tusks," she said simply. "Only if you are kind. People should be more like animals then." "Yes." She scattered the last of the grain and brushed off her hands. The bandages were off now, the wound healing to an angry pink scar that would fade with time. "But people are afraid of what they do not understand. It is easier to hate than to learn." He couldn't argue with that. He'd seen enough hatred in the war to last several lifetimes. "Your clan," he said carefully, because she rarely spoke of them, but he needed to know. "Are they likely to come looking?" Her expression shuddered. "No, when you are cast out, you are dead to them. It would be weakness to seek me. They will not come. But other orcs might, or humans who see an orc alone and think she's fair game." She met his eyes steadily. "I can defend myself, Zachariah. I have been doing so for many years." "I know, but you don't have to do it alone anymore." The words came out more intense than he'd meant them, and he saw her eyes widen fractionally. "I mean, while you're here, you're safe here." "Why?" The question she'd asked that first day, but with different weight now. "Why do you do this? You owe me nothing. You do not even know me." He leaned against the doorframe, considering. "During the war, I was with a patrol that got ambushed in the mountains. We were outnumbered, outflanked, and I took an arrow through the shoulder. Would have died there if an orc woman hadn't pulled me into a cave and packed the wound with moss until the bleeding stopped. Never said a word, just kept me alive through the night and disappeared before dawn. I never even saw her face clearly." He met Orla's shocked gaze. "My commanding officer later told me she probably just wanted information or was playing some long game, but I knew better. She saved me because I was dying and she could help. That's it. That's the whole reason." Orla was very still, something complicated working across her features. "Your people would have called her traitor." "Your people called you traitor for not killing children. Seems to me that traitor is sometimes just another word for decent person." This time when she smiled, she didn't cover it. The expression transformed her whole face, softening the hard edges that survival had carved into her features, and her small tusks caught the morning light like ivory. His breath caught in his chest at the sight, at the unexpected beauty of her joy, unguarded and real. "There," he said quietly. "See, beautiful." The smile faltered, but she didn't hide it, just looked at him with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through his carefully maintained walls. "You truly mean that?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't." She turned away, but not before he saw the flush that darkened her green cheeks. "I should check on the goats," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. "The black one was limping yesterday." He let her escape, watching her cross the yard with that distinctive orcish grace, all coiled strength and careful awareness. Something was growing between them, something that probably should have scared him more than it did. But here on the frontier, so far from the rules and expectations of either of their peoples, it felt like maybe they could write their own story. Winter deepened, and Orla became as much a part of the farm as the animals she tended. She was tireless, throwing herself into the work with the kind of dedication that spoke of someone trying to prove their worth. It bothered him more than he wanted to admit, the way she seemed to think she had to earn her place, as if existing wasn't enough. "You don't have to work yourself to exhaustion," he said one evening after she'd spent 6 hours splitting wood in the freezing cold. They were sitting by the fire, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, his shoulder aching in the way it always did when snow was coming. "I will not be a burden," she said firmly. "You're not. You never were." He set down his own mug and turned to face her fully. "Orla, I didn't help you because I wanted a farmhand. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. You don't owe me anything." Her jaw set stubbornly. "In my culture, debts must be repaid. It is a matter of honor. In my culture, we help people because they need help. That's it. That's the whole transaction." He softened his tone. "Look, if working makes you feel better, I'm not going to stop you. But I want you to know you have a place here regardless. Not because you're useful, but because I want you here." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than he'd intended. Orla's eyes were very wide, searching his face in the firelight. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know you refuse to hurt children even when it cost you everything. I know you're gentle with the animals, and you always check the fence line without being asked, and you hum when you think no one's listening. I know you've had tea in your hand for 5 minutes and haven't taken a single sip because you're too busy thinking." He reached over and gently pushed her mug toward her mouth. "And I know I haven't felt this settled in my own skin since before the war, and that started the day you stumbled into my barn." She did drink then, probably to buy herself time to think. When she lowered the mug, her expression was raw with uncertainty and something that might have been longing. "Zachariah, I am orc. You are human. Our peoples aren't here," he interrupted. "It's just us, Orla, just you and me, and what we decide matters." It is not that simple. Why not? She opened her mouth, closed it, frustration flickering across her face. Because eventually the world comes back. The village will learn I am here. Travelers will pass through. My past or yours will catch up. We cannot hide forever. I'm not asking to hide. I'm just asking, what do you want? Not what your clan wants. Not what humans expect. Not what's practical or safe. What do you want? The question seemed to shake something loose in her. She set down the mug with trembling hands and stood abruptly, pacing to the window where snow was starting to fall in thick, soft flakes. I want to stop looking over my shoulder. I want to sleep without nightmares of blades in the dark. I want. She pressed her palm against the cold glass. I want to believe that what I see in your eyes when you look at me is real. That I am not imagining the way you find excuses to stand close, or how you smile when I master some new task. I want to stop feeling like I am a monster who got lucky enough to fool a kind man into tolerance. He was up and across the room before he'd consciously decided to move, turning her around to face him. You're not fooling me, and you're not a monster. You're Orla, who saved my goat from drowning in the creek even though you hate cold water. Who mends my shirts without being asked and leaves little carved figures on the mantel because you think I don't notice. Who covers her smile because the world taught her to be ashamed of something beautiful. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. I see you, all of you, and I want you to stay not as a farmhand or a guest, but as whatever you want to be. Tears were gathering in her eyes, catching the firelight like jewels. I want to be yours, she whispered, the admission clearly costing her. I want this to be home. I want to wake up every morning knowing I belong somewhere with someone. I want. Her voice broke. I want to stop being so afraid. He pulled her into his arms, feeling her strong body shake with sobs she'd probably been holding back since the day her clan cast her out. You're home, he said into her hair. You're home and you're safe, and I'm not going anywhere. She clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world, and he held her through the storm of her weeping, all the grief and fear and exhaustion finally finding release. When she finally quieted, she didn't pull away, just rested her forehead against his shoulder. I am sorry, she murmured. That was not very warrior-like. Warriors are allowed to cry. It's in the rules. That got a wet laugh out of her, and she did pull back then, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes and a tentative smile that she didn't try to hide. Your rules are strange. You'll get used to them. He brushed away the tears still clinging to her cheeks with his thumbs. Orla, I need you to understand something. When I say you're beautiful, I'm not just talking about your smile or your tusks. I mean all of you. Your strength and your kindness and your courage. The way you think and move and exist in the world. That's what I see when I look at you. I do not know how to believe that, she admitted, but I want to learn. Then we'll figure it out together. He hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and careful, a question more than a statement. She answered by pressing closer, her arms wrapping around his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like a promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, she was smiling widely, unself-consciously, her tusks no longer a source of shame but simply part of the face he was falling in love with. The snow fell throughout the night, and by morning the farm was blanketed in white silence. They worked side by side as usual, but everything felt different now, charged with new understanding. He caught himself watching her constantly, the efficient way she moved through the barn, the gentleness of her hands on the animals, the sound of her voice as she talked to the horses. And he caught her watching him too, with a softness in her eyes that made his heart stutter. It was 2 weeks later when the trouble he'd been half expecting finally arrived. He was in the house making bread when Orla burst through the door, urgency in every line of her body. "Riders," she said shortly. "From the village, 4 of them, armed, his hands stilled in the dough. How close? They will be here within the hour. I saw them from the north ridge." She was already moving, gathering her few possessions with practiced efficiency. "I will leave before they arrive. You can tell them I stole food and disappeared. They will believe that." "No." He wiped his hands and caught her arm as she passed. "You're not leaving. Zachariah, if they find an orc here, then they find an orc here. Orla, I meant what I said. This is your home now. I'm not going to let you run because some villagers might have a problem with it. They will do more than have a problem. They could arrest you, claim you are harboring an enemy. Let them try." He pulled her closer, his expression firm. "I'm not losing you because I was too much of a coward to stand up for what's right. We face this together or not at all." He could see the war in her eyes, the instinct to run battling with the desperate desire to believe they could actually have this. Finally, she nodded jerkily. "Together. But if they try to hurt you, we'll deal with that if it happens. Right now, let's just see what they want." They didn't have to wait long. The riders came down the lane in formation, and Zachariah recognized the leader, Marcus Oakes, the village mayor, a gruff but generally fair man in his 50s. The other 3 were younger, hands resting on sword hilts, clearly expecting trouble. Zachariah walked out to meet them with Orla at his side, her posture proud and defensive, ready for violence even as she hoped for peace. "Marcus," Zachariah greeted evenly. "What brings you out here in this cold?" The mayor's eyes went straight to Orla, narrowing. "We've had reports of an orc in the area. Raiding parties have been seen in the foothills. We're checking all the outlying farms, making sure everyone's safe. Appreciate the concern. As you can see, we're fine." Marcus's gaze sharpened. "Zachariah, that's an orc standing next to you." "This is Orla. She works here." One of the younger men spoke up, his voice hard. "You're harboring an orc. That's treason, Ortega. They're the enemy." "She's not my enemy. She's never been anyone's enemy, near as I can tell." Zachariah kept his voice level but firm. "She was cast out of her clan for refusing to raid a village with children. She came here wounded and half frozen, and I helped her because that's what decent people do." "Decent people don't cavort with monsters," the young man spat, and Zachariah felt Orla tense beside him. "Watch your mouth, Derek," Marcus said sharply, then turned back to Zachariah. "This is complicated. You know the tensions between our peoples. If word spreads that you're sheltering an orc, then word spreads. Marcus, you know me. I fought in the border wars, saw things that still keep me up at night. I'm not naive about what's happened between humans and orcs, but she's not her clan any more than I'm responsible for every crime any human has ever committed. She's been here 2 months, and the only thing she's raided is my woodpile because she kept insisting on splitting enough for the whole winter." Marcus studied them both for a long moment. Zachariah could practically see him weighing politics against conscience. Finally, he sighed. "Does she speak?" "I speak." Orla's voice was clear and proud. "I am Orla Lennox, formerly of the Ironback clan. I was exiled for refusing to harm innocents. I claim no allegiance to any clan now. I have offered no threat to your people. I only wish to live in peace." "Peace," Derek scoffed. "Orcs don't know the meaning of Derek. Shut up or go wait with the horses," Marcus snapped. He turned back to Orla. "You're cast out. Truly," she drew herself up to her full height, which was impressive. "I am dead to my clan. I would be killed on sight if I returned. I have no people now except—" She glanced at Zachariah and something in her expression softened. "Except what I make for myself here." Marcus looked between them and understanding dawned in his eyes. "Oh, it's like that, is it?" Zachariah met his gaze steadily. "It is." Lord above, Ortega, you don't do anything by halves, do you? But there was something almost amused in the mayor's tone now. He rubbed his face tiredly. This is going to cause talk. Let them talk. They'll do more than talk. There are people in the village who lost family to orc raids. They won't be understanding about this. I know. Zachariah did know, felt the weight of that knowledge like a stone in his gut. But I'm not turning her out because other people can't see past their hate. I'm sorry for their losses, truly. But Orla isn't responsible for them, and I won't punish her for the crimes of others. What if the raids get worse? What if her clan comes back? Then we deal with it. But we don't condemn someone for what they might do, only for what they actually do. And what she's actually done is work hard, help out, and make this place more of a home than it's been in 5 years. Marcus looked at Orla again. You really refuse to raid? I refuse to harm those who cannot defend themselves, she said quietly. Children, elderly, the weak. It is not honor to prey on the helpless. My chieftain disagreed. So I am here and my clan is there, and I accept the consequences of my choice. Even if those consequences include humans who will fear and hate you on sight. I have faced fear and hate all my life, human, from both sides now. I am accustomed to it. But her voice was tight with old pain. The mayor was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right. Here's what's going to happen. I'll tell the village council that I checked on Ortega's farm and found no signs of hostile orcs. I'll leave out the part about the orc who's living here. But Zachariah, if you're serious about this, you need to bring her into the village. Soon. Let people see her, talk to her. Because if they hear about her through rumor, it's going to be 10 times worse than if you're upfront about it. Zachariah's eyebrows rose. You'd let her come to the village? I'd strongly encourage it, before someone else does my job with less discretion and suddenly there's a mob at your door. Better to control the narrative. Marcus gave Orla a hard look. You'd have to be on your best behavior. No displays of strength, no rising to provocation. Can you do that? I can. Then come to the market next week. Sunday. Bring something to trade like anyone else, talk to folks, show them you're not a threat. It won't win everyone over, but it might keep the pitchforks away. He gathered his reins. Zachariah, you're a damned fool, but you're a principled fool, and I respect that. Don't make me regret this. I won't. The riders left, Derek casting dark looks over his shoulder, but Marcus had clearly spoken. As they disappeared up the lane, Orla let out a shaky breath. That went better than expected, she said. Marcus is a good man, but he's right about the village. We need to do this carefully. He turned to her, taking her hands. Are you sure you want to? We could stay out here, avoid the whole mess. No. If I am to live in this world, I must be part of it. Hiding will only make the fear worse. She squeezed his hands. And I will not let you face the consequences of helping me alone. We stand together, yes. Yes. He pulled her into an embrace, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. Together. The week until market day passed in a blur of preparation and growing anxiety. Orla was quieter than usual, and Zachariah caught her practicing conversations under her breath, trying to smooth out her accent, make herself more palatable. It broke his heart a little, watching her try to sand down her edges to fit into a world that had already decided what she was. You don't have to change yourself, he said the night before they were due to leave. Just be you, that's enough. Is it? She was staring into the fire, her expression troubled. Zachariah, what if this does not work? What if they refuse to accept me and it causes problems for you? You could lose your standing in the village, your trade contracts, then I lose them. Orla, look at me. He waited until her eyes met his. There is nothing they could take from me that would be worth losing you. Nothing. Do you understand that? She swallowed hard. I am not worth so much. You're worth everything. He took her face in his hands, the gesture achingly familiar now. "You're worth the risk and the trouble and whatever comes next. I need you to believe that. I am trying." Her voice was small. "It is hard to unlearn a lifetime of being told I am worthless except for my strength. Then I'll keep telling you until you believe it, every day if I have to." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose until she was smiling despite herself. "There, that's better." "You are ridiculous. You love it." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and nodded. "I do, I love." She stopped, the word hanging unfinished between them, suddenly too big and too real to speak aloud. "I know," he said softly. "I love you too." Her eyes went bright with tears, but she was smiling, really smiling, her tusks gleaming in the firelight and no shame anywhere in her expression. "Say it again." "I love you, Orla Lennox. I love your strength and your gentleness and your terrible stubbornness. I love that you hum to the chickens, and you always put too much salt in the stew, and you're learning to believe you deserve to be loved. I love you, and I'm going to keep loving you regardless of what anyone else thinks about it." She kissed him then, deep and fierce and full of promise, and when they finally made their way upstairs, it was to the room they'd been sharing more and more often, the spare room long abandoned. They made love slowly, carefully, learning the landscape of each other's bodies with reverent attention. And afterward she fell asleep in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat like it was the most precious sound in the world. Market day dawned cold and bright, the sky a sharp blue overhead. They loaded the wagon with eggs and preserves, and the carved wooden figures Orla had been making in her spare time, her clever hands producing everything from tiny birds to intricate knots. Zachariah had suggested she sell them, and though she'd been skeptical, she'd agreed to try. The ride to the village was tense, Orla sitting stiffly beside him on the wagon seat, her hands clenched in her lap. He reached over and took one, lacing his fingers through hers. "Breathe," he said. "It's going to be all right. You cannot know that. No, but I believe it anyway." The village square was already busy when they arrived, farmers and craftspeople setting up their stalls, the air full of voices and the smell of fresh bread. Their arrival didn't go unnoticed. Conversations faltered and stopped as people caught sight of Orla, her green skin and orcish features impossible to miss. The silence spread like ripples in a pond, until the entire square seemed to be holding its breath. Marcus materialized at Zachariah's elbow, his expression carefully neutral. "You came. Good. Set up over there by the smithy. Tom's a reasonable fellow, won't give you trouble." They unloaded their goods with the awareness of dozens of eyes tracking their every movement. Orla moved with careful precision, her posture unthreatening but proud, refusing to hunch or hide what she was. Zachariah stayed close, his presence a silent statement of solidarity. The first hour was excruciating. People browsed the other stalls, pointedly avoiding theirs. A few curious children drifted close before being yanked back by nervous parents. Zachariah sold a few jars of preserves to people who'd been buying from him for years, but they kept their transactions brief and didn't meet Orla's eyes. It was an older woman, gray-haired and weathered, who finally broke the stalemate. She approached slowly, leaning on a cane, and stopped in front of Orla's carvings. She picked up a small bird, turning it over in her gnarled hands. "You make these?" she asked. "Yes." Orla's voice was steady. "I carve in the evenings. It soothes the mind. Fine work. Detailed." The woman looked up, meeting Orla's eyes directly. "I'm Martha. I lost my son to an orc raid 5 years back. He was a soldier, died in the borderlands." The square had gone silent again, everyone listening. Orla didn't flinch. "I am sorry for your loss. War takes from all sides." "It does." Martha set down the bird and picked up a different one, this one with its wings spread in flight. Did you kill humans before you came here? I fought in battles, yes. I do not know if any of my arrows found their marks. I hope they did not. Orla's hands were trembling slightly, but her voice remained clear. I did not want that war. When I was given the choice between my conscience and my clan, I chose conscience. It cost me everything I had ever known. I would make the same choice again. Martha studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I'll take this one. The flying bird, how much? 2 coppers. Here's 3. It's worth it. Martha tucked the carving into her pocket and looked around at the watching crowd. She makes a good carving and she speaks honestly. That's more than I can say for some humans I know. With that pronouncement, she stumped off, leaving a wake of shocked murmurs behind her. After that, the ice began to crack. A few more people approached, some curious, some cautious, a few openly hostile but keeping it to glares and mutters. Orla handled each interaction with dignity, answering questions patiently, never rising to provocation. By noon, she'd sold half her carvings and Zachariah had moved most of his goods. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning. They were packing up as the afternoon shadows lengthened when Derek, the hostile young man from the mayor's party, approached with 2 of his friends. All 3 had been drinking, their faces flushed and their movements too loud. Well, if it isn't the orc and her pet human, Derek said, his voice carrying across the square. Tell me, Ortega, does she have to keep you chained up at night or do you beg for the collar? Zachariah felt Orla tense beside him. He put a warning hand on her arm. Walk away, Derek. You're drunk and making a fool of yourself. I'm not the fool here. You're the one who brought a monster to our village. He turned his bleary gaze on Orla. How many of our people have you killed, Greenskin? How many children orphaned? How many wives widowed? I have killed no one who was not trying to kill me first, Orla said quietly. And I am here now because I refuse to do exactly what you accuse me of. Liar. All orcs are liars and savages. Derek spat at her feet. That was when Zachariah's patience ran out. He stepped between them, his voice dropping to the cold, flat tone he'd used in the war. You've had your say, now back off. Or what, you going to defend her? Choose a monster over your own kind. I'm choosing a good person over a bigoted drunk. Yes, every time. He looked at Derek's friends. Take him home before this gets worse. For a moment, it hung in the balance. Then Marcus appeared again, this time with the village constable, a large man with an even larger club hanging from his belt. Problem here, gentlemen? Marcus asked mildly. Derek's friends grabbed his arms, pulling him back. No problem, Mayor, just heading out. They dragged Derek away, his protests fading into the afternoon air. Marcus watched them go, then turned to Zachariah and Orla. That went about as well as could be expected, he said. You made a decent showing. People are talking, which means they're thinking, which is progress, but I'd suggest you avoid the tavern for a while. Let things settle. Understood. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. The mayor shrugged. I just kept the peace. You two did the hard part. He looked at Orla. You handled yourself well today, with dignity. That matters. After he left, Zachariah helped Orla into the wagon, his hands gentle on her waist. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, he could tell, and now that they were leaving, the exhaustion was crashing down. You were amazing, he said as they rolled out of the village. I'm so proud of you. I was terrified, she admitted, sagging against his shoulder. Every moment I expected violence. But you faced it anyway. That's what courage is. They rode in comfortable silence, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist to steady her. As the farm came into view, she straightened slightly. Zachariah. Thank you. For standing beside me. For choosing me even when it cost you. It hasn't cost me anything that matters. but you're welcome." He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the barn and turned to face her fully. "Orla, I've been thinking about the future, about what we're building here." Her eyes searched his face, something like hope and fear mixed in their depths. "What have you been thinking?" He took her hands, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was a boy. "I'm thinking that I want to keep building this with you, not just for now, but for always. I'm thinking that I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life and fall asleep listening to you breathe. I'm thinking." He swallowed. "I'm thinking I want to marry you if you'll have me. I know it won't be recognized by any church or government, that it'll be just between us and whatever gods might be listening, but I don't care. I want you to be my wife, Orla, in every way that matters." She was staring at him, tears streaming down her face, her mouth open in shock. For a horrible moment he thought he'd miscalculated, pushed too far too fast. Then she launched herself at him, kissing him fiercely, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes," she said against his mouth. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. I want to be yours in every way for all the days I have left." He kissed her back just as fiercely, relief and joy flooding through him in equal measure. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, he rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have a ring," he admitted. "I didn't plan this, it just sort of happened. I do not need a ring, I only need you." But she was smiling that wide, unguarded smile that he loved, the one that showed her tusks and her joy in equal measure. "When? Tonight if you want, tomorrow, next week, whenever you're ready." "Tonight," she said decisively. "I have waited long enough for happiness. I do not want to wait any more." So that night, under the stars in the farmyard they'd both come to love, they made their vows to each other. No priest, no witnesses except the horses and the distant cry of an owl, but it felt more real and binding than any ceremony Zachariah had ever attended. He promised to love her, to stand by her, to see her always for who she truly was. She promised the same, her voice strong and clear. No hesitation or doubt anywhere in her words. He'd found a leather cord and threaded it through a small carved bird she'd made, one of the first pieces she'd ever done. He tied it around her neck and she touched it reverently, tears shining in her eyes. "I will never take it off," she whispered. "You're stuck with me now," he teased, and she laughed, pulling him down for a kiss that tasted like salt and joy and promise. They went inside hand in hand, and if the world beyond their farm still held prejudice and fear, tonight it didn't matter. Tonight they had each other, and that was enough. The winter passed into spring and spring into summer. Word of their relationship spread through the region, bringing both support and condemnation. Some villagers warmed to Orla as they got to know her, won over by her quiet competence and unfailing kindness. Others remained hostile, crossing the street to avoid her or muttering prayers against evil when she passed. Derek continued to cause trouble, spreading rumors and trying to turn sentiment against them, but Marcus held firm, and gradually the opposition became more whisper than roar. Orla bloomed under the acceptance, even partial as it was. Her carvings became popular, sought after by travelers passing through who didn't carry the same prejudices. She started teaching some of the village children who showed interest, and though their parents were wary at first, none could deny she was patient and skilled. She laughed more easily now, smiled without thinking to hide it, moved through the world with a confidence that came from knowing she was valued. One warm summer evening, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink when she took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I have news," she said, her voice soft with wonder and nervousness. It took him a moment to understand, and then his breath caught. "You're certain as I can be. The healer in the village confirmed it yesterday." She searched his face anxiously. Are you pleased?" "I know we did not plan," he silenced her with a kiss, pouring every ounce of joy and love he felt into it. When he pulled back, he was grinning so widely his face hurt. "Please doesn't begin to cover it. Orla, this is. We're going to have a baby." "A child," she corrected, her own smile breaking through the worry. "Half human, half orc. The world will not know what to make of them. Then the world will have to learn, like it's learning about us." He kept his hand on her stomach, marveling at the life growing beneath his palm. "They're going to be so loved, so wanted. We'll make sure they know that every single day. They will be different, neither fully human nor fully orc. It will be difficult, it will be beautiful, like their mother." He kissed her again, softer this time. "We'll face whatever comes, just like we always have. Together." She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, his hand still resting on the small swell of their growing child. "Together," she agreed. The news spread, as news did in small communities, bringing a fresh wave of reactions. Some were genuinely happy for them. Others were scandalized, predicting doom and disaster. Martha, the old woman who'd been the first to buy Orla's carvings, showed up one day with a basket of baby clothes she'd knitted, her eyes suspiciously bright as she pressed them into Orla's hands. "Every child deserves a warm welcome," she said gruffly, "no matter who their parents are." Orla hugged her, surprising them both, and Martha patted her back awkwardly before hurrying away, muttering about having things to do. As Orla's pregnancy progressed, Zachariah found himself marveling at her strength. She continued working until he finally insisted she rest more, and even then she found ways to help, sorting seeds or mending tools or humming while she carved intricate toys for the baby. Her body changed, her already strong frame softening in places, and she glowed with health and happiness. They prepared the spare room as a nursery, painting it in soft yellows and greens, hanging Orla's carvings from the ceiling where they'd spin and dance in the breeze. Zachariah built a cradle from oak, carving protective symbols into the wood from both human and orc traditions, a blending of their two worlds for the child who would bridge them. The baby came on a crisp autumn morning, the leaves outside turning gold and red. The village midwife attended, a pragmatic woman named Sarah who delivered half the children in the region and didn't have time for prejudice when there was work to be done. The labor was long and difficult, Orla's hybrid anatomy making things complicated, and there were hours when Zachariah paced outside the bedroom door, praying to any god who might listen. But when the baby's first cry finally split the air, thin and indignant and absolutely perfect, he nearly collapsed with relief. Sarah opened the door, her face tired but smiling. "You have a daughter," she said. "Both mother and baby are healthy. Go meet your girl." He took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom where Orla lay propped against the pillows, exhausted and radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her smile so full of love and wonder that it stole his breath. "Come see," she said softly. He crossed to the bed and looked down at his daughter. She was perfect, with downy black hair and skin a shade between his tan and Orla's green, a soft olive that seemed to glow in the lamplight. When she yawned, he caught a glimpse of tiny, tiny tusks just beginning to show, smaller even than Orla's. Her ears were pointed but not as pronounced as a full orc's would be. She was exactly what Orla had said, something new, a bridge between two worlds. "She's beautiful," he breathed, reaching out to touch one impossibly small hand. Her fingers wrapped around his thumb with surprising strength. "She's absolutely perfect." "I was thinking," Orla said, her voice hoarse from exertion, "we could name her Olivia." "It was my mother's name before she died." "Olivia Ortega," he tested and smiled. "It's perfect. She's perfect. You're perfect." He leaned down to kiss Orla's forehead, then their daughters. "I love you both so much." They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them, while the autumn light slanted through the windows and the world continued spinning outside. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever prejudice or difficulty their daughter would face, she would face it knowing she was desperately loved and wanted. That would have to be enough. Word of the birth spread, and to Zachariah's surprise, the village response was more positive than he'd feared. People were curious about the baby, this unprecedented blending of human and orc, and curiosity often trumped prejudice. Gifts appeared on their doorstep, blankets and toys and jars of stewed fruit. Not from everyone, but from enough people that it mattered. Martha visited weekly, holding Olivia with the practiced ease of someone who'd raised 5 children of her own. "She's going to be a heartbreaker," she declared one afternoon, bouncing the baby gently. "Look at those eyes, sharp as her mother's." Derek still muttered and spread his poison, but his voice had less power now. It was hard to maintain that orcs were monsters when one of them had just endured childbirth with the same courage as any human woman, when her half-orc baby cooed and smiled just like any other infant. Reality had a way of eroding even the most entrenched beliefs, given time. Olivia grew quickly, strong like her mother, curious like her father. By her first birthday, she was toddling around the farm, getting into everything, laughing when the chickens pecked at her toes and squealing with delight when Zachariah tossed her in the air. Her tusks came in properly, small and delicate, and she showed no shame about them because she'd never been taught to. She was simply herself, perfect and whole, and both her parents made sure she knew it every single day. On a warm spring evening, when Olivia was tucked into bed and the farmhouse was quiet, Zachariah and Orla sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. She was leaning against him, his arm around her shoulders, both of them tired in the good way that came from a full day of work and family. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "The hardship, the judgment, the way things could have been easier if you had chosen differently." He didn't even have to think about his answer. Never, not once, not for a single second. He turned to look at her, this remarkable woman who'd stumbled into his barn and changed his entire world. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Orla. You and Olivia. Everything else is just noise." She smiled, that beautiful, unguarded smile that had taken her so long to learn, her tusks gleaming in the starlight. "I love you, Zachariah Ortega. Thank you for teaching me that I was worthy of being loved. You always were. I just helped you see it." He kissed her temple. "And I love you too. More than I have words for." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around them, and from inside came the sound of Olivia stirring in her sleep, mumbling baby nonsense before settling again. This was their life now, not perfect, not easy, but theirs. Built on kindness and courage, and the radical decision to love across all the boundaries the world tried to impose. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the farm settled into peaceful sleep around them, Zachariah thought about that first morning when a wounded orc girl had crashed into his barn, how terrified she'd been, how certain of rejection. He thought about the long road they'd walked together to get here, every obstacle and triumph, every moment she'd covered her smile because the world had taught her to be ashamed. He hoped she knew now, finally, truly, that her tusks were beautiful, that she was beautiful, that their love was beautiful, and their daughter, and the life they were building together out here on the frontier where the old rules mattered less than the new ones they were writing with every passing day. She caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am," he said simply. "How impossibly, ridiculously lucky," she laughed, the sound warm and rich and full of joy. "We both are. And there, under the stars with the woman he loved beside him and their daughter sleeping peacefully inside, Zachariah had to agree. They were lucky. They were home. They were exactly where they were meant to be. The future would bring its own challenges, it always did. There would be more Dereks, more prejudice to face, more lessons to teach Olivia about navigating a world that didn't quite know what to make of her. But they would face it together, as they always had, with courage and love and the unshakable certainty that they belonged to each other. And that, in the end, was everything that mattered.